I solved 845 Rubik's Cubes while running a 26.2 mile marathon. How did I do it? Today I'm going to answer that question and a couple others. This was an official Guinness World Record attempt. I say attempt because it's technically unofficial according to Guinness. I will go into that at some later date. But I did everything according to their rules. Their rules stipulated that the marathon had to be done under 5 hours. I ran it in 4 hours and 56 minutes. I did it in an official marathon, the Azusa City Marathon in Azusa, California on November 14th, 2014. So this record is actually almost as old as Yiheng Wang, the current world record holder, about 12 years old, just to put in perspective how old I am. So how did I do this? Well, that is the question, right? So the record at the time was 200, about 200. No, that's fine. 175. Yeah! This is the record breaking yourself. Let's do it one-handed. Always. Woo! 176. All right. New record. I thought about it, and that came out to, I don't know, about 40 seconds per cube or something. And I tried to crunch the numbers to see what it would be possible to do if you had an endless supply of cubes, right? But the trouble is, how do you get an endless supply of cubes to come with you? This was probably the hardest part of the attempt, and the part that made my attempt and my record stand out above all the other ones is I figured out a way to get an endless amount of cubes to come with you. Most record attempts for this record up to this point involve taking either a bag of cubes or having like backpacks full of cubes set along the course at different routes, and you would just pick up and solve as you go. As cubers, we tried to find the most efficient way to do things. I realized that I wasn't efficient at all. There's no way we're gonna carry my goal of 1,000 cubes in 5 hours. There's no way that I was gonna carry all that on me. So I figured out a way to get all the cubes to come with me. What I did is I had a crew of 4 people drive a golf cart for the entire marathon. They followed me. We had one person scrambling. We had one person handing me the cubes that were scrambled, and that same person took the cubes that were solved from me as I went along. So it was about 15 cubes that were cycled in and out during this event. We had somebody with a clicker keeping track of the number of cubes as we went along, and then obviously somebody driving it. Now I'm sharing this in hopes that maybe somebody can replicate this record. By all means, I encourage somebody to go out there and try to do exactly what I just did. I think this is probably the most efficient way that you can do this kind of record. My team involved a WCA delegate, Michael Young, and a friend, another cuber friend named Everett Kelly. So Michael had a laptop in the back of the go-kart, and he was facing me, and he was scrambling using a scrambling program. Handed it to Everett, would take the cube, hand it to me as I'm running. I would throw a cube at him or in a fishnet that he would use to catch the cube, because obviously sometimes it would be harder to just directly hand it to him, so it'd be easier to just grab the cube from him and just toss it into this fishnet. And so that's how I solved 845 Rubik's Cubes in less than 5 hours while running a marathon. When I look back at it at the time, it didn't seem that hard, but recently, having tried to jog on a treadmill while solving a Rubik's Cube, it actually is kind of hard. How much do I think is possible? What is the upper limit for this kind of record? Now, I don't think there are too many people who fit this category of being able to run a marathon and solve Rubik's Cubes, but they are out there. But it's not the most competitive record. That being said, I want to say that a 5-second solver might be able to solve a Rubik's Cube on the run in about 8 seconds, and there's going to be 1 second delay in terms of handing it, 1 second like getting the new cube. So a total, a 5-second solver who can run marathons might be able to do a cube every 10 seconds, including the exchange, and that also takes into account how difficult it is to actually run and solve with no inspection. So you got to keep in mind that these solves are also no inspection, and on the run it adds a little bit of time. So 10 seconds might sound slow to a lot of people who are 5-second solvers, but to me that sounds like a reasonable amount to estimate. So that comes out to 6 cubes per minute, 360 cubes per hour. And if you run for 4 hours and 59 minutes, that would be 1,800 cubes. So higher end of what I think is possible is 1,800. Now I set a goal for 1,000. I ended up falling short and doing 845. There were times where I ran and the golf cart was ahead of me. And we did really good for the initial attempt, but I think if this were to ever be done again, obviously there could be more efficiency involved in the event. I think 1,000 cubes is definitely doable. I think 1,800 would be the absolute limit for a really fast solver these days to be able to try to do that. I think 1,500 is possible for an elite cuber. I would love to see somebody actually go for this. So if anybody knows anybody and who's a runner and a top level cuber who can solve it, I want to say in under 10 seconds, I think they have a good go at this record. At the time in 2014, this was my retirement event. That's right, I retired in 2014, right about when maybe some of you started. A lot of you started way after, but the old people who started in 2014, I retired by the time you started your first competition, so that's how old I am. In 2014, I think I was averaging about sub 10. So I think anybody who's sub 10 could probably do 1,000 and break this record. Granted, I think the current record officially might be like something like 400, 500. I got to see over the years as this record remained unofficial, I got to see the record be officially broken by some significantly smaller numbers, and it was kind of lame and frustrating because I'm over here, I did 845 cubes, but Guinness World Record won't officially recognize it because they kept changing the goalposts for this attempt. And for the sake of not wanting this video to be 30 minutes long, I will summarize the reason why this is unofficial in about 1 minute's worth of explanation. Guinness World Records has a free way of doing things and a way that you pay $20,000 to have one of their official adjudicators that does not cover their travel, that does not cover their room and board, that doesn't cover anything that it actually costs to get the person to come here. If you do the free way, this was back in 2014, it might be the same now, they make it really time extensive. If you submit an inquiry, they take 4 to 8 business weeks to get back to you. And once I got through the initial 6 months of squaring this out to make sure that all the ways that I was going about it were legit, I went ahead with the attempt. I recorded it using a little GoPro. I uploaded it to YouTube. They said the record cannot be uploaded to YouTube. You have to upload it individually to our servers. So uploading 5 hours of footage to the servers took a while, but I ended up doing that. And then they changed the goalpost, saying that you needed to have a certain amount of witness verifications that didn't exist before the record attempt. So it was really shady stuff, and I ultimately just gave up on it, and I didn't really care at that point. They kept changing it so many times, and it took 3 weeks between messages to hear from them in response to me trying to figure out why it remained unofficial. So at a certain point, maybe about 6 or 7 back and forth with Guinness, I just decided it's not worth it to me. I did the attempt. It's on YouTube. If anybody wants to go see it, it's there. All 5 hours of footage is on there. It was a really fun time. I had a great time doing it. But over the years, I got to see the record, the initial record of 200 get broken. It was maybe 250 and then 400 and then maybe 500. I don't know. Either way, the ghost record as it stands now is 845, and that has nobody has come close to that. Why has nobody come close to the record that I set in 2014 over these years? Part of it is because they didn't know that my record attempt existed. If people had known that 845 cubes was the record, there might have been different attempts, or they might have gone about it differently. Maybe there would have been less attempts because it's kind of a daunting number, or maybe they would have figured out, maybe with my explanation for how I did it, maybe they would have chosen to do it that way. As it is, I'm still waiting for somebody to beat the record. I would love for somebody to do that. It's a really fun time. Would I ever do it again? Never say never. I did it in 2014, and it was kind of a one-time thing. If the stars align, I think these days I don't run that much anymore. I run like maybe 2 miles a day. You have to be in really good shape to casually run a marathon while solving Rubik's cubes. And believe it or not, like I said, it's actually a lot harder to solve cubes on the run than you would imagine. So I wouldn't say probably not, but then again, I never thought I would be back into cubing at this point in my life. So if anybody has any more questions, or if you like what you see, drop a follow on my YouTube or my Instagram, and I will share more stories related to cubing, relating to my cubing life. Worlds 2009 was the first big competition I went to. I flew with Ryan Patricio. I remember hearing about Yao, the Yao method back then with Robert Yao. That's when I first started hearing about it. Anyways, I have a lot of history in my head that I feel like is worth hearing. And I will share that in individual chunks at different points. So if you like what you see and you want to hear more about cubing history from the perspective of somebody with a 2007 ID, make sure you subscribe, like, and follow, and share with other people. Coach Philip, I believe in you. I hope you believe in yourself.